Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Rebel, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I am labeling this as a crime drama just because obviously there's a lot of courtroom and crime-related stuff that kind of happens. I feel like this could also go as an untitled review, but I'll leave it as a crime centric for now until later on in the show. Then I'll make that determination whether or not I want to relabel things. But regardless, I think the show did a great job. It actually kind of surprised me because I guess this particular heart valve case might be like the overarching story of the season. Like, she'll have different cases, but like this will be like the overarching story of the entire season will be that case. I thought that was going to be like the case of the first episode, but it seems like at least where it is now, maybe it's going to be a thing of maybe it's going to be like the first couple episodes, maybe it's like a two-parter, maybe a three-parter, but then like it is going to be a different overarching case. I don't know. I'm so curious about like the structure of what the show is going to be. But obviously, we got a great introduction to who Rebel is. Obviously, her real name being Annie, so on, so forth. But just simply, everyone nowadays just calls me Rebel. But also learning like, oh yeah, she's got 3 kids by 3 different people. And it's like, oh, that's so interesting. Because I knew Ziggy was going to be her kid, who is played by the actress who played Gert on Runaway. So there's your ABC, Marvel connection in that regard. But I didn't also realize like Cassidy was going to be her daughter, or that Nate was her son. So I was like, wow, that's so interesting. Especially finding out like who their dads are. Like obviously Cassidy's dad is what's his name, Flynn, I believe. I could be mistaken because James Leisure's character, which James Leisure I know from like Las Vegas as well as most recently Good Girls, I believe FBI agent Turner, but also Nate. I believe Nate is the cop. Because when she gets arrested and it's like, oh, why is she getting out of here? Is she famous? Like, nope, this is my ex-husband who cheated on me when our son was 2 years old. And now he feels guilty about it. He's like, oh, you almost make it seem like feeling guilty is kind of a bad thing or something like that. But I was like, right, that's Nate's dad. So like, it's interesting, and also like it's interesting to find like to see all 3 of her kids, each with their own issues, but also like see like each of her 3 exes, because it turns out Ziggy's actually adopted. That's her kid with her current husband Grady, which they've been together for 10 years. Would have expected it. For one, I didn't expect them to be married, and also that they were married that long. Just because, like, when he's first introduced, he's so lackadaisical that I wouldn't have. He seemed too like almost hippie, like free flowing, like whoa, it's all good. Like he's too like that, too mellow for me to think like, oh, he's like I don't know, just like I said, too hippie-ish in my opinion. Which I hope that's not offending anyone by me saying hippie-ish, yeah, it was just, like I said, just a nice introduction to who the character is, understanding who she is. And, yes, she's very get in your face, like, tell it like it is. Give you an opportunity to be like, hey, your company is making all these vows that are making a whole bunch of people sick. You could just quietly admit it, but he didn't want to because it's like your company is profiting off of people's suffering and death. So Rebel kind of puts him on blast, even has some of the people who are suffering from it, kind of, protest and stuff, because it's like, oh, look at all these people who are either investors or people who are connected to company. It's like, oh, this company you're connected to did all this terrible stuff, has been making profit off of people suffering and dying. So, making her statement, making a point. But even while locked up in jail, she meets Naomi, and it's like, oh, I want to help you out. It's like, because she has an abusive relationship. It's like, wait for the bruises to get darker so you can take pictures of it to make it. Because I'm sure the reason why she said that is because she doesn't want anyone trying to take that in court, being like, oh, you can't even, like, if the bruises are too light when the pictures are taken, they'll be able to, like, loophole their way around it. So I'm sure that's why she was kind of saying, like, wait till then. But it's also, like, I also love the aspect of, oh, anytime something comes up, it's like, she's like, Cassidy's like, of course my mom recommended me to you. Because you even see it later on. She's like, oh my God, that's ageism. Contact my Cassidy Ray, that's my daughter. Tell her I sent you. It's like, oh, thanks. So it's like any chance she gets, she's throwing work her daughter's way. But really quickly kind of breaking down like some of the relationships. Obviously, like Ziggy seems like she's the one that is the most supportive of their mom, in a sense that she's just kind of like her mom's like fighting spirit. She's kind of down for it because she believes in what their mom believes in. Cassidy's more about handling things a certain way, because I think for her it's her mom's too much of a, not necessarily a free spirit, but it's about saving the world kind of took precedence over being around for her. We don't know if the others really have that same resentment or not. Like I said, Ziggy seems like she's the most down for it. Nate seems like he has his own issues of like, you know, we're all trying to live our own lives, but then we have the situation of you kind of dragging us into like, you know, your situation of trying to save the world while we're just trying to live our lives doing the best we can. But I think when it's all said and done, like each one of her kids holds some of like who she is and just has that strong heart like she does. Which I didn't even talk about it at the beginning, which I should have. Freaking Katie Sagal, dude. I've said that the moment I saw like the previews of it. It's like freaking Katie Sagal. Best thing she's known for. Like I've never seen the show. I've always been interested. I've just never taken time to watch it. Is Sons of Anarchy. I know she's a big part of that. The things I best know her from is, or at least some of them, being Peg from Married with Children. A sitcom I actually forgot about until just now. It's like, right, 8 Simple Rules she did with John Ritter, R.I.P. But then obviously Leela from Futurama, like their things. Like, God, I'm sitting here thinking about that. I was like, man, I completely forgot about 8 Simple Rules. Like, I remember watching that when I was in like what, middle school, maybe high school. I remember watching that because I think that's the first thing I ever saw. I'm gonna butcher her name, Kaylee Cuoco. I think that's the first thing I ever saw her in before, like not even before Big Bang Theory, but even before Charmed. Because I think that was the thing I saw her in and got to know her through first before I saw her in Charmed, because she eventually popped up in Charmed. It's a whole tangent, but it's like, come on, it's Katie freaking Sagal, dude. That's sick. That's so cool. And I really love her as Rebel, because I think she brings obviously like this very, I don't know how to like phrase it. It's just like just the energy she brings as Rebel, and it's, like I said, she is that. She's kind of a rebel in her own right. That the fact of the matter is she can be this firecracker, but it's also for all the right reasons. She can get under people's skins for both the best and the wrong reasons, just for who she is. But she's so adamant about being there for people. You know, as Cassidy kind of says, oh, my mom's kind of obsessed with injustice, that she kind of lives off of it. And it's just, you know, other people kind of have to suffer at that. Like, you know, because I think it's also just like when her entire life is that, it's kind of no room for anything else. The argument could be made like, oh, maybe that's why none of her previous relationships have necessarily worked out in that regard. I don't know. I think it's something just kind of interesting to kind of think about. But obviously she tries to get Cruz, played by Andy Garcia. He's one of those actors where I'm like, I know your face, I know your name, I've seen enough projects with, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I can't pinpoint a specific one to come to mind to be like, oh, I'm sure there's plenty of people who are like film buffs who are like, oh, Andy Garcia, this particular performance, but it's just that thing of like, I know your name, I know your face, I know you've been killing the game for a long time. It's just like, I just can't pinpoint the filmography of like what I know you from, you know, because I know you from too much, because I've seen your face all over the place. I just can't place a movie on the top of my, I'm sure if I look through his filmography, it's like, oh, how can I be so stupid? Of course this movie. It's that type of situation. I'm going to be doing that a lot, because it's just like, there's a lot of people I'm like, oh, this. The actor who plays her son, Nate, seems familiar too. I don't know him. Obviously, like her friend Lana is played by, well, not, that's actually her ex-sister-in-law, which I thought was an interesting storyline development. Really quickly, played by Tamala Jones, Laney from Castle, as well as many other things. But, you know, there's your ABC connection. Regardless, I thought that was interesting when it turns out, like, oh, like, Cassidy's dad, like, she's Cassidy, Lana's Cassidy's aunt, because, and it's like, oh, and despite... and that's the thing. It's like, you know, it takes a village, right? So they have this interesting thing where it's like, obviously she sides more with Rebel, despite like whatever went down between Rebel and her brother. Like, Lana still has her back, even works as her investigator. Even saying like, oh, if it turns out that Grady's cheating on you, you won't have to worry about killing him. I'll kill him first. It's like, the fact is they still have that tight relationship. Even telling Ziggy, oh, call me auntie. She's like, yeah, if I want to be 16, I'd rather be 16 than a 6-year-old calling you auntie and stuff like that. Which we also learned she's like 72 days sober, 73, something like that. So it's like, so once again, kind of her issues, we kind of learned a little bit earlier in the episode, but yeah, regardless, I went on a huge tangent, but she's trying to get Cruz to take the case, but he doesn't want to, and I just love their dynamic because he's just like so annoyed of her, because even later on when she ends up bringing up all those patients in there and just had them sit on his floor, he's like, honestly, I hate you, and she's like, you wouldn't be the first man that said that to me. So at the same time, you have like Lana helping out Naomi. Cassidy ended up taking the case, even though she was kind of reluctant at first. But seeing Naomi, seeing her in shock like that, she's like, "Oh yeah, I did this wrong and I did this wrong." And she's like, "What was the third thing? What was the third thing?" It's like, obviously I did a third thing to piss him off, and it's like it's heartbreaking. And Cassidy's like, "You're going to be okay. You're just in shock right now." And then like to have her like shaking and breaking down like that was like. That was like actually really hard to watch. It was like heartbreaking, you know. And in court, you know, the guy like the prosecutor or whatever was trying to say like, oh, like the fact is there was less violent way to defend herself, which Cassidy was like, no, I object. You object? No, I object you, because it's like. She was literally fighting for her life while he had his hands around her throat, and she grabbed the knife and she fought for her life like what anyone would do. You know, it's like, you know, what your mom would do, because I guarantee your mom would do it. So kind of putting that dude in his place. So I don't know. And then obviously later on, Nate's dad shows up. They kind of is like, oh yeah, we call him in. Like it's like, oh yeah, there's drugs here. You know, everything right now would have only given him 14 days, but with the drugs, the unlicensed weapon, he's actually going to get like 2 years. But it even gets crazier because even under those circumstances, he attacks a cop. He tries to attack Lana, but she ends up chasing him down, and it's just like, please don't make me pull out my gun on you. And Rebel going hard at him later on by being like, don't even contact Naomi anymore. The fact of the matter is you're going to go admit everything you did, because basically I'm going to make your life a living hell. I'm going to ruin you. Even saying like, oh, I know, you know where your mom and dad live? Oh, that place they just got? Yeah, I will take that from them. And I'll do it, essentially just basically, I'll do it smiling. It won't bother me because I know I'll be hurting you. And I'll be having, and once again, I'll be doing it all just for fun. So don't test me. Don't go near Naomi again. Serve your time. Admit your guilt. Serve your time and lose Naomi's number because she got me on speed dial. I was like, yo, home dude didn't even have a chance to say anything. Just kind of like a, yeah, okay, and agree. And she just bounces. Kind of, once again, she's like, not just a firecracker. She is a full-blown hurricane. But I like that because I know that this obviously, like, I've heard the name Erin Brockovich, but I'm not well versed in her. Obviously, this character is kind of loosely based on her, and you know, and I think that's a beautiful, awesome thing to have someone that, you know, adamant and, you know, ready to fight for you, because even like Helen, for example, had kind of given up, but she's like, no, Helen, I'm gonna, no matter what it costs, no matter what it's gonna take, I have promised you I am going to get that valve out of you, because she had kind of given up because she was starting to feel sick. Even like her daughter was like, mom won't even let me like call an ambulance. But it's like, don't give up. Like, I'm still here to fight with you. We're going to keep fighting. We still have a fight ahead of us, so don't give up. You know, kind of inspiring people like that. Like I said, it's beautiful. That's even sadder too, because we find out like Helen's daughter also has one too, and she's had miscarriage after miscarriage, and now she's, you know, coming to term with like her baby, and it's like, to find out that her baby has a disease, like, where basically like there's fluid buildup and they don't know what caused it, so like her baby might not even survive past a week. And like I said, it's just a heartbreaking story after story and just circumstances. And obviously this all playing out in front of Cruz, who was super reluctant. I did like, for comedic purpose, I did like the fact that he acted like he was going to walk with her, and he's just like, you can sleep in the lawn, but the sprinklers come on at dawn. So and then he like quickly goes back inside. But we find out he has a wife, Sharon, who was kind of going through similar things and ended up dying, and she was actually Rebel's best friend. So that kind of shows us this connection. Because I was wondering whether like it was kind of like there's potentially something there between her and Cruz, but it's like, no, like they lost someone very important to them. And that's what Rebel's kind of pushing this particular case, because it's like, you not taking this case, you see all these innocent people and what's happened to them, not taking this is almost kind of a spit in the face to share it. And obviously the whole thing pissed Cruz off to the point he was just like, and like, okay, stop, and he just yells. He's like, stop it. The fact is, for him, he's done everything he can not to remember what happened to Sharon. He doesn't want to remember it. And being in this case, the reason why he didn't take it, because it was a constant reminder of Sharon. And the moment Rebel was like, yeah, like, what Sharon loved about you, and trust me, she told me, was your ass, but also that fighting spirit of yours of fighting for what's right. And, you know, she'd be so disappointed in you right now. And hearing all that, like, he was just like, actually, Rebel, you're fired. Like, you're a good friend and everything, but you're fired. Just, he didn't need the constant reminders, but she was able to kind of eventually get to him, because it did start weighing on him, and it's like, all right. He ends up actually bringing out the file, and he's like, he actually had an autopsy done on Sharon, but he doesn't know. He was actually so scared that what if she actually killed herself, because he doesn't know, and he was scared to know. So Rebel saw the files, but he never did, because he's like, today, I just, where I am today, I can't look at those. So there's also the element of Cassidy, basically her dad trying to scalp her from Cruz. It's like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, we can pay you more. The fact of the matter is, it's because for Cassidy, she looks at her dad as like, oh, you work with big the corporations that could do good, because that was something like Rebel was trying to make a point of on TV. It's like, I don't hate all corporations. Corporations can do good. It's just a lot do bad. And so for her, it's a situation of, for Cassidy, it's a thing of like, she kind of doesn't like the free bono work from. I don't think it's necessarily about the money, but I think it's just the fact is that her mom, I think it's probably, how I interpret that is initially like her mom's, any free promo work, God, you knew what I'm trying to say, sorry. Early recordings, early/late recordings, pro bono work is probably just a reminder of just like everything her mom did, like that, like, oh, I kind of didn't have much of a regular childhood, because no regular childhood when you have a mom like Rebel who fights. It's like, I'm sure that element's going to play a big role in this. It's like, you kind of put saving the world first and foremost before any of us, and it's like, we just kind of had to accept that, you know. And obviously I'm sure that played a part in all of her other relationships, because it's like, yeah, you are a lot to handle, but at the same time you are an amazing woman, you know. Obviously, like the twist when we find out about Grady, because it's like, Lana was like, yeah, that number, yeah, it's not a hooker, it's a divorce attorney, which obviously she's like, in California, you'd be married 10 years. Well, 10 years is actually 3 days from now. So no matter what happens, you get nothing, zip. You're not going to get a damn penny from me. But he was like, dude, I'm fixing something up for a divorce attorney. And you're like, oh. And it's like, ooh, she's like, well, this is a bit awkward. But then Ziggy's like, no, that's not the case. I've seen the divorce papers. So it's like, because at first I was like, oh, man. I was like, because even though I was like, oh, she's reading too much into it. It's like, oh, no, you weren't. You were right to be suspicious. She even said it, like, having gone through the relationship she's going through, like, the fact is, it's kind of prepared her to be like, when she can kind of feel and sense when something's off. But then he kind of goes off, but basically, much like the reason why her kids kind of have, at least in particular, like, Grady kind of shares a lot of resentments that Cassidy shares. Like, they have a lot of, like, commonality issues of, like, her being away and everything. It's like, you're never here to cook me dinner. And all the ladies are like, cook you dinner? And he was like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you dug your grave with that. But then it was just kind of like, in that moment, Nate was like, oh, okay, thanks, and like punches him, because like he'd never liked him. It's like, for the past 10 years, I haven't liked you. I even love the line of like, oh yeah, like when Rebel was initially going after Grady, being like, oh, like, who did you get advice from? These two about how to try and steal everything from you. And I love at one point, it was like, whoa, how did we get dragged into this whole conversation? Because even he was like, yeah, back me up, fellas, about how like crazy she is. They didn't say anything, because it's like, yeah, Rebel's kind of messed up and everything, but they also know, like, yeah, let's not be on her bad side, especially when this is supposed to be a celebration of your love and everything. Because, once again, Nate's dad cheated on her. Cassidy's dad didn't. It's purely a situation of she didn't like the fact that he took big corporation jobs. Like, it's like you're doing this more so about money, even though he's like, the money I get, I can put towards a good cause. So it's kind of like the ends justify the means. It's like, yeah, all we do is give legal advice because that's what we do as lawyers. We're just giving people advice, and that just includes big companies. But it's like we're able to take a lot of that money we make and we give even more to the same charities and causes that your mom believes in. Like, we believe in all of that. It's just I am willing to kind of cut a bigger check or whatever. So it just shows you his perspective on things. Also shows that what we didn't really get an answer in the episode. It doesn't seem like she took the job, but Cassidy is being offered a job. And there's also the whole thing with her colleague Amir. I love the whole thing. He's like, her dad's like, oh, Cassidy, let's go have a drink of coffee or something like that. She's like, oh, can Amir come? And he was like, no. And he was just straight up. So it says colleague quotes and everything. So who knows what Cassidy and Amir's situation is? Maybe they're just friends. Maybe it's kind of like I'm into you, but you're not realize I'm into you. Like, maybe it's kind of like a affection, one-way street type of thing. But at the end of it all, like I had talked about, we do have Cruz at the end of it deciding to take the case. It's like, all right, we're going to take this fight to this company. Once again, it shocked me that that's what I was looking at the time. I was like, wow, there's not a lot of time left in this episode. And it's like, oh, it's because I was wondering if it was going to be something that was kind of quickly dealt with at the end. But it's like, no, like I said, I think just based on the trailer, like what I saw in the trailer, it's mainly from this episode. There is some stuff sprinkled in from later episodes, I'm sure. But it's like, I think it's so interesting that I'm curious to see if it ends up being a thing of this particular case is the overarching thing of the season, while also working on other cases that might come up. Or is it purely a situation of maybe it's just going to be maybe because there's some stories that are like that where it's like, I'm trying to think of a series that's I definitely know that's like, there's one I can't think of off the top of my head that's like basically every 2 episodes is a storyline. Because the stories, there's a particular show I'm trying to think of that's like that, where like every 2 episodes is an entire arc, and then you like the next 2 episodes are like they're back-to-back episodes of the same, like they're continuations of each other, and then like 3 and 4 are different, then 5 and 6 are different, and then you get what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to think of what it is. There's some show that's structured like that I'm wondering, is this like that, or like I said, or is it a few episodes? Like, I'm curious to see the structure of the show, but also see what other things Rebel gets mixed up in. Obviously, like, I doubt this case is going to be easy because this is like a $1 billion company with a lot riding on it, so can't be found. They're probably going to fight tooth and nail with a crap ton of lawyers to make sure. So it's going to be probably an uphill battle, but I'm really interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.